Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Excuse me. Today is December 8th, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank Keith Nightenhauser. Is that it?
Helzer.
Sorry. Keith Nightenhauser for introducing me to Wayne Glausser. Wayne E. Glausser. Where are you calling from, Wayne?
Greencastle, Indiana.
Well, again, I thank you for part one. Here we go into part two. We talked about your tipping points in pursuing your callings of being a writer and educator, and how you've integrated philosophy in there, and much more. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Kubrick says great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. Now, what role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing a book?
You know, that's a pretty interesting question. And the way I'd approach an answer is to say, when I am writing something, I have two hats or two minds. One is my writer mind. And when I'm writing, I try not to have my interpreter mind going. So I think I'm better as a writer when I'm not trying to do my interpretive analysis, because I think if I'm doing my interpretive analysis, I start steering things in a too tidy way. And then after I've written something or drafted something, then I want my interpretive mind to look at it. And often my interpretive mind will see some things that my writer mind didn't really notice. And to me, that's part of the fun. It really feels like two different selves, two different minds working. Yeah. So I guess I agree with both of those perspectives. You want the writer part. I want my writer part to sort of lose the direct, contact with what it means, and then the interpretive mind to take over.
Yeah. So, this guy I interviewed yesterday, amazing. He just says, that's all people seek out is meaning. They don't do. So I'm curious, how do you get into that writer mind? Is there some sort of process where it's like, okay, I'm going to consciously leave the analytical? I mean, how can you literally separate that from happening?
Yeah, it's really through a lot of my career, that was what I was trained to do. And what I did as a career was be an interpreter. And it came naturally to me. And it really was, it was what I did. And in a lot of my writing, my scholarly writing, that's all I did was interpretive writing. And so it was later in my career that I started doing writing that was more creative, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better word. And so in that, when I did that kind of writing, that's when I had to tame my interpretive mind and say, no, don't be steering me in a tidy way. I want there to be a kind of dreamlike quality to this, where there isn't a clear, reasonable connection to things. I just want it to go. And then you'll have your chance later on. I keep telling my interpretive mind, you'll have your chance. And it's one of the best things that can happen to me when I'm writing something is for somebody else to point something out that I had no idea what's going on in something I wrote. And that's just a wonderful thing to happen.
So you have friends or associates that you will send drafts to?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes. I'm kind of what's the word for it? I'm trying to find a nice way of saying it. I'm very, very thin-skinned about people criticizing what I write. That's the most difficult part of writing for me, is having people comment and criticize. So I would be the worst person to enter a writer's workshop. I would just, I'd have to make up excuses for when they were discussing my work. I had to say, I got to go. Because I'm very sensitive to criticism. I can take it, when I get readers' reports, but it's very difficult for me to receive criticism.
But that's like, you don't want to homogenize art and have these people. But it seems as though I didn't quite get that through line. You say you do have a few people you trust to give you feedback.
Yeah, I do. I like it, but that's the key. I trust them, and
right. I see. You have a select few that do give you that. But again, it's back to the question is, how do you get into that state? Because you're analytical most of your career, how did you switch over? You just self-brainwashed yourself, or like, how do you do that?
That was the hard part.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty analytical. That was the part that came naturally to me.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that my father was all into science and tried to get me to do all that.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I had that kind of part of my brain that worked. And so it was the harder part was turning that off and letting myself write without that kind of analytical input. So that's something I still work on with everything I write. I'm constantly taking stuff out, deleting things that I can see were added just because I was interpreting too tidily. So that's a work in progress. I'm always working on that.
Yeah. How many books have you written, Wayne?
Well, let's see, 4 books, counting. There's one thing that is in 2 editions, but really the second edition was it's another book. So 4 books, and an awful lot of essays.
Yeah. And the essays in the books are all nonfiction or fiction or a combination?
All nonfiction.
All nonfiction. Yeah. Okay. So now, in regards, I've never asked this question, but I thought it might be appropriate here. Schiller wrote about poetry. 1, there's the naive mode that's ancient and assumes language as a window into reality. Or there's 2, the sentimental mode belongs in our artificial age and sees language as a mirror to our inner turmoil. Now, I don't know if those spur any thoughts for you. I'm not saying I believe or not, but is there any sort of distinguishing, like you distinguish between your writer mind and your interpreter mind? He's distinguishing something a little different, or is it the same?
Yeah, his way of talking about it is often, it sounds like the way we often distinguish a realist mode and a romantic mode. Of approach to literature or consciousness. And I was always attracted to the romantic approach to that. interior interiority,
Yeah.
expressionist mode. Of course, Goethe said that realism is healthy, romanticism is sick.
Wow.
And I came. It sounds better in German, but
Yeah.
that's what it is. And so I've come in some parts of my life, I've come to appreciate that point of view also.
Right.
That Schiller is, what does he call it? Sentimental, the sentimental.
He calls
view.
it he calls it the naive mode or the sentimental mode.
Yeah. The sentimental mode. I've come to appreciate Goethe's opinion that there's a certain sickness attached to that.
Yeah.
And I guess I think in my youth I was completely devoted to romanticism, and although it's still my first scholarly specialty, the older I get, the more I appreciate the great 18th century realists.
Yeah.
The healthiness of it.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your reader when you're writing your book?
Well, that's probably not as much as I should.
But why do you, let's just go into that for a second. Why do you say that? Why? You mean because your publisher wants you to sell books, or somebody wants you to sell books? Is that a self-imposed, like, capitalistic sense? Or you're just really wanting more people to read your book, whether they buy it or not?
Yeah, well, I always, I would like people to read my stuff, but I've never been, for whatever reason, this isn't saying because I'm a great artist or something. I've never really been the sort of person who thinks about crafting my stuff to fit a certain audience. I never think about, okay, I'm pitching this toward a certain group of people. And my editors, well, okay, when I first was writing about psychedelic drugs, I had a different kind of book in mind. And the publisher said, well, that's very nice, but that's not what we want. And they told me, this is the kind of book that we want for our audience, for our readers. And so they gradually led me around to shift to what they wanted. And so after a while, I finally said, oh, okay. And I got to like writing what they wanted. So I think that's the situation where I really have changed my work to fit a certain kind of audience. But it was really through their leading. They're very patient leading. Yeah. They said, well, and they told me, oh, we really like what you are doing. You can publish it somewhere else, but here's what we want you to do. And I found that I did like what they were telling me to do. Yeah. It's just I didn't know that I would have liked it. So, but on my own, in a vacuum, I don't think about readers, but I feel guilty about it.
Yeah,
I just don't. I just do. I'm not by my essence a commercial being.
But do you think your 3 to 5 top writers that you've loved were that way? They thought of their readers, or it varied?
Probably not.
No,
they not my favorite ones. No.
And that's what makes the art so pure, is like they're not catering to the reader. But again, this is what Frank Zappa said. He says, I write this music for myself. If other people like it, that's great. And that to me is, he's being he's romanticizing it because he lives in a capitalistic society, and he knows if he hits these notes and sings these lyrics, kids will write by his music, and then he can write more music.
Yeah.
So, I think all those what's the quote I love is Sam Johnson said, no man but a blockhead ever wrote except for money. Now, someone told me, I don't know who Samuel Johnson is that well, but someone said, oh, he's just fucking teasing. But what do you think of that quote of his?
Yeah, no, he means it. Yeah. He's he means it, because he was poor, and he had to work really hard to get patrons. He didn't, no money came to him except for his writing. And he worked like a dog to scrape money together. And in fact, one of his most famous incidents in his career came when he had tried, he's most famous for writing that first really big dictionary of the English language, and which became like one of the most famous books ever. And for years, he went to this one earl, the Earl of Chesterfield. He went into trying to see him to get money while he was working on the dictionary. And he never got in to see this guy. He was refused. And so when he finally started publishing parts of the dictionary and it got great acclaim, the Earl heard about it and sent a note to Johnson, say, well, I'd be willing to, be a patron now. And Johnson sent him a famous letter saying, basically, fuck you. It was in a much more elegant way. And it became one of the most famous documents circulated around London. And Johnson, in his pride, said, I tried so often, and now, I have no need because I've got other patrons. And so anyway, but Johnson, he was, when he said that, he meant it. I don't know that quote. No one but a blockhead writes.
Yeah, no man but a blockhead ever wrote except for money.
Yeah. Oh, he meant that. He meant that.
Yeah,
he was
but your 5 top authors, you said no, they don't think of their audience. But are you saying the audience and money are two different things?
Well, I'm not sure I'd include Johnson in my top. I'm thinking, I like Samuel Johnson a lot.
But I mean, your 5 top writers, I'm trying to separate, or is there a separation between money, selling books, and, the intention of writing for the audience? Because isn't that go hand in hand? If you're writing, thinking of your audience, it's because you want them to buy your book and read it, but not just,
Yeah. Well,
it's did you think? When I say, the question is this: when I say the Duchamp question, how much you think of your audience, isn't that implying the sellability of your product in a way, or not?
Yeah. No, it does imply that, and a part of it is there's certain writers who, for whatever reason, get a reputation, and then they can write whatever they want and it'll sell.
Yeah.
It'll sell enough. And then there are other writers who can write within a genre that sells.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
It sells because it's a romance novel.
Yeah.
Or a certain kind of thriller. So there's sort of two things there. If you get a reputation, then the person sells whatever, it's your identity that sells it.
Yeah.
And then there's, if it's a romance novel, it doesn't matter who's writing it. You maybe don't even know who writes it. It's a pseudonym.
Yeah.
So, so in those two cases, the question is moot. So for people like me, it does matter.
Yeah.
It's but I don't make a living on my writing. I
Yeah.
made it in my career.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a different case.
Yeah.
I don't have to make a living.
Right. Because we'll go into that in 1 second. But first, this one. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Human sensorium, he calls it. Knife and fork extends your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Shutter in a camera, projector extends your eyelid. Maybe even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a pen or a keyboard, what humanness does it extend for you?
Mm. It extends, I'm thinking about what I'm writing now. It extends my my capacity to remember, my my hold on experience, the field of experience, the richness of my perception, and my capacity to make precise observations about the world.
Yeah. That's pretty thorough, dude. That's amazing. So let's go into this word experience for a second, because Marshall has a line: everybody experiences far more than they understand. Yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior. I interpret that, and it might be wrong, as saying if the kid comes in from the cold and the parent says, "Don't touch the stove, it will burn your hand," that's experience. If the
Mhm.
parent goes, "Let me teach you the dynamics of heat. You can get really close to the stove, warm, rub your hands together and get them warm."
Yeah.
So I think he's kind of saying experience shapes our behavior, but we should have understanding more so shape our behavior. What do you think? I can read it again if you want.
Yeah.
Everybody experiences far more than they understand. Yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior.
It is experience that influences behavior. Yeah, I wonder what he means by that. Um, here's another take on it. I'm not sure if this is what he means,
Yeah.
but one thing that a study that I found fascinating that I read about a while ago suggested the shallowness of most people's understanding. That is, people think they understand a lot more than they really do.
Yeah.
And this was a study that was, as many are, it's with grad students. I think this is grad students at Stanford. And it involved the flush toilet. And it asked a body of grad students if they understood how a flush toilet worked.
Yeah.
And almost all of them checked yes. And then in a further part, it asked them to explain how a flush toilet worked, and almost none of them knew. Almost none of them knew. So to go back to the terms that he was talking about,
Yeah.
they certainly have the experience of a flush toilet. And it's an experience that they think they understand, but they don't understand it.
Yeah.
They don't understand it. And if they had to put one together, uh, on their own, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like early man starting over again. So it's really experience that makes up our lived world,
Yeah.
not our understanding. Our understanding is a kind of a shadow world that we think we're living in.
Yeah.
We think we have a much richer understanding life than we do.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of what he's getting at there is
Yeah.
we're really living in this world of experience, which is maybe, if to use the Platonic metaphor, that the world of experience is kind of like our world of shadows. We're not in the world of Plato's sunlight, which would be the understanding. We're living in the shadow world of experience because we don't understand how the flush toilet works. We think we do.
Yeah.
We don't.
Wayne, I'd say to that great comment you just said, jiggle the handle. Because, one of my best McLuhan teachers, Clinton Ignatoff, he's just like brilliant on really understanding Marshall, which is really hard. It seems as though on the surface it's easy, but he is hard because he's not saying concepts or theories. He's just putting out probes. He wasn't saying that last line as a statement. He was more like, I wonder, and he said, and he's a computer kid. And it's like, he said, the thing is nobody knows how to take their cell phone or their laptop apart and fix it.
No.
We could do that with cars. We could kind of act like we could fix our car, or like I said, we could say, jiggle the handle.
Yeah. We can't do it with cars anymore. They're just computers.
No, you can't do it with cars anymore. I mean, that's all planned obsolescence. Okay, so here's the McLuhan in 57, because you talked about how you went into being an educator. But he's asking, it's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. So that's basically the question. What's the difference between education and entertainment? But here's his quote. It's like setting up the distinction between didactic and lyric poetry on the ground that one teaches and the other one pleases. However, it's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. Now, funny, because a lot of people agree with that. And one guy finally says, no, whatever displeases teaches more effectively. So your take, and being an educator for many years on this line, whatever pleases teaches more effectively.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think I sort of, I kind of don't like the word pleases.
Yeah. Good.
I would substitute the word engages. I think a good teacher has to be engaging.
Yeah.
And has to know how to have a good conversation with students.
Yeah.
And so, because if they're not able to listen well and reply and have that give and take, then the class is not going to go very well. They're not going to learn actively. So it's got to be an engaging process. Now, I don't like the pleasing part, because I think in many cases, what students need is a challenge to many of their held ideas, and that's not a pleasing sensation. So that they should feel some discomfort. It's not as if you're trying to be a sadist and cause them pain, but some discomfort should be part of the process. And part of good teaching involves defamiliarization. You're taking away the props of their accepted world. You're peeling away some veils. And that's, none of that is pleasing or comfortable. So I think it's a good teaching involves unsettling students, but stimulating them. And the key is making all that happen when you're engaging them. You're getting their imaginations working and making sure you're not just hectoring and lecturing. The worst teaching is the didactic lecturing, where it feels as if you're just instilling your point of view.
It's good, Wayne. What's the difference between art and science?
Oh, how would you feel if you were asking Michelangelo that question, or Leonardo?
Leonardo's the big one, yeah.
Yeah. What would Leonardo say? He'd probably say, "There's a difference." I wouldn't say that. Art and science. I would say, okay, here's one smart way of approaching that. It's by a writer named Alan Lightman. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a great writer and a very, very good theoretical physicist. And he teaches both of these things at MIT. So I think he's the only guy who's ever had appointments in both physics and creative writing at MIT. And he teaches both. And he said something to this effect. He said, in the morning, I teach physics. And there I'm looking for, to find patterns where there's apparent disorder. And in the afternoon, I teach creative writing. And there I'm looking to find some nuances of disorder where there's apparent order, and shapeliness. And he says it just feels like it's two opposite or complementary things. He feels as if I'm doing the opposite things. And I think that's one nice way of getting at the difference between art and science. In science, it really is about trying to find all that hidden order in things. And I feel that in art, at least in literary art, what Alan Lightman and I are trying to do is look at the apparent order and find the hidden differences and fractures in the apparent order, or the things that are the surface order is hiding.
Yeah. I'm going to read a couple quotes in that regard, and any reaction to flesh it out even more. Jean Cocteau said, art is science made clear.
Made clear? Yeah. I don't know. That's science made clear. That doesn't really hit it much for me, but Cocteau, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, here's McLuhan. When we push our paradigms back, we get history. When we push them forward, we get science.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I like that.
Chomsky, we learn more about ourselves from literature than from science.
Yeah, I'm totally about that.
Yeah.
There's I'm very hesitant at this moment in our history to bash science much. Since, and you know why. But science has some inherent problems because it doesn't deal well with introspection and frankly art. So we're at a moment when I don't want to bash science, but we're also at a moment when the prospects for humanities are so fragile that we need to remember what humanities can do and science cannot.
Yeah. And a lot of times this word comes up, magic and mystery. Arthur Clarke said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's right about that.
Yeah. And here's Warren Ellis's rewording. Any sufficiently advanced civilization is indistinguishable from its nature.
From its nature? I'm
Yeah.
not sure what he means by that.
Yeah, I mean that one's a little confusing because in advance. See, I don't like the first part. Any sufficiently advanced technology or any sufficiently advanced civilization. Basically, I think they're saying Arthur Clarke saying any invention is indistinguishable from magic. He's
Yeah.
saying any civilization is indistinguishable from nature.
Yeah.
So is civilization natural or is it something we learn and invent?
Yeah. Well, that's a problem of terminology, I think.
Yeah.
That's just what you want to call nature and civilization, and also the terminology of magic and religion. All those terms. But all of that stuff, all of those quotations stuff. There's another phrase that's used, that God of the gaps, that meaning that people keep justifying existence of God based on gaps in our scientific knowledge. And as those gaps dwindle, the justification for God keeps getting pushed and it gets, smaller and smaller. So God was, the basis for belief in God suddenly disappears because science advanced to explain that part. And then we said, no, but we still don't understand this. So therefore there's a God. And they said, no, we explained that. And then it keeps going. So as long as we have some gap in our scientific knowledge, they can still summon a God, a reason for a God. They say, yeah, but eventually all those gaps will disappear. And so this advanced civilization thing, they will appear to be gods if they have closed all our gaps. If they can do something that's superior to any of our technologies.
Do you know who originated that God of the gaps?
I can't remember who first said it. Now I don't remember it, but it's a 20th century thing.
I'm really excited you turned me on to that because all I could think of is turtles all the way down when you were saying it. It's like
one of my favorites of all time, the turtles all the way down.
and then Marshall had a great line, the gap is where the action is. That resonating interval between knowing and not knowing. And it's sort of like your resonating interval between being a writer, creative writing, and an interpretive or analysis. That gap is where all that action is happening.
Yeah.
And so here's Bruce Sterling. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from its garbage.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a very nice one. Yeah. I had a friend who wrote actually it was a monograph. It was a book about the TV show The Sopranos as being about garbage and waste, and and they were in the waste management business. But anyway, he had a whole sort of metaphorical, symbolic string of things about it. I only remember little bits of it, but it kind of made sense.
No, it's amazing. Who invented garbage? At what point did humans invent garbage? And then how much does it reflect? I mean, I find books in the garbage that are 100 years old and they're in mint condition. I mean,
really?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm amazed at how books hold up, and like we're book people, so that's like, well, is a hard drive going to hold up for 100 years?
Yeah. one of the things that brings me dismay about current college culture is books are disappearing. I
Yeah.
mean, you see so many students who are just reading their online
Yeah.
versions of them, and I understand that, but it's not the same thing. It's not.
It's we're brainwashed. I mean, I went to a poetry reading yesterday and this woman apologized. She said, I had it printed out, but I forgot it. So excuse me, I have to read it off my cell phone. So
Oh,
she said, I would rather of reading it off a paper. It's like
that's what she
all
said.
kids, everybody reads their cell phones now. But I mean, we have a bias,
Oh, but it's I don't know. It's very different, and
No, I know it's different, but
but
yeah,
it's people. I know people say my young colleagues say, oh well, it's just people complained when they moved to the Gutenberg printing press. He said,
yeah,
oh, we lost the illuminated thing, and I said,
yeah,
yeah, for good reason. Those
yeah,
illuminated books were gorgeous. They
yeah,
should have complained, and what a loss.
yeah,
But I but I do believe there are credible studies that show students don't retain as
yeah,
much knowledge when they read on the screen as they
yeah,
do when they read in an actual book. And I
yeah.
believe that because I know when I proofread, if I'm proofreading on a screen, which I usually have to do now, I miss I
Oh yeah,
miss stuff. I mean, your eyes don't
yeah,
like reading on the
yeah,
screen.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, here's two Einstein quotes. Albert said, religion without science is blind. Science without religion is lame.
Uh, okay, religion without science is what?
Blind.
Yeah.
Science without religion is lame.
Now, did he really say this, or is this one of the ones?
Well, that's the great thing about paper and pen and me writing quotes. So I take them out of context and I put them on my science page.
Yeah,
And then if I don't say what year, then
yeah,
it's like, oh, we got to Google it and find out. Yeah.
yeah,
And then it is always, I mean, being a collector of quotes, I've said quotes for 10, 20 years and then find out they're not that person. And
yeah.
they're all over the internet with
Oh, oh,
me. I,
oh,
these people have found me, put them up, and they go, "Oh, I saw Gerry said it, so it must be true." So
yeah.
then and I apologize. I mean, I've done this in
But you're,
various film history things, and I go, "Oh, well,
yeah,
I'm mistaken." But once the damage is out there, it's
yeah.
out there.
You're the gatekeeper. Yeah.
That's
Well,
it. I've fought gatekeepers my whole life. Now it's like, oh no,
I like that. I like that that quotation, and I want to believe that Einstein said it. Okay, and
yeah,
especially the second part where science without religion is lame. Is that right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and Einstein's views on religion are complicated, and I in one book that I wrote, um, I was really trying to at some point trying to pin down my own religious perspective, and uh, and I was looking for the closest I could come to my own, and I didn't like any of the kind of store-bought off-the-shelf categories. And it seemed to me that Einstein's difficulty in finding a category was close to mine. I'm not trying to compare myself to Einstein exactly, but it seemed to me that his difficulty in choosing a category was similar to my own. I think the way I put it was his religious beliefs were too I can't remember a way. I had a nice way of phrasing it. Now I can't bring it to mind.
yeah,
But they were too the too fine a filter, too fine a filter. But anyway, he likened his religious beliefs. He said they're kind of like Spinoza's. That's what he said.
Wow.
And I always liked Spinoza, and Spinoza was, Spinoza, people don't know what to do with him. I mean, he was born Jewish, but he was eventually rejected by the Jews. He tried to be accepted by Christians, but they wouldn't accept him. He's been called an atheist, but he didn't consider himself an atheist. He's a pantheist. He's just all over the place.
Yeah.
It seems to me that Einstein and Spinoza, those are the two that I came closest to. And then Einstein said, I kind of believe what old Spinoza believed. And Spinoza, at the heart of what he said, in his big work, he said, at one point, he said, Deus sive natura. He said, God or nature, when he's talking about the uncreated, the uncaused cause at the beginning.
Yeah.
He called it God or nature. And it's as if, the way I interpret that is, it's nature. Nature's just always been there.
Yeah.
If you need it to be God, fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's what Einstein's getting at there, is that for Einstein, he felt that he needed a religious supplement, and a spark of something besides just the science that he was doing. And not all scientists need that, but Einstein needed it.
It's amazing, Wayne, because I usually say these two Einsteins in a different order. And the fact that I said that one first, it's almost like you explained it maybe with the second one, which is, he said, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful quotation.
Yeah.
And that's almost a gravestone thing for me. I mean, I think that's a deep truth.
Yeah.
And it's something for a scientist to say that. Yeah.
That's sort of going back to the connection of your dad being a scientist and then you being not an anti-scientist, but you going a different route. But it's almost like when you're doing your analysis and you're interpreting, that's kind of like science. But Auden kind of said, the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies, which I really like, because we just go, oh, art is great, but we don't know if it's really just like putting us in a zone where we can just feel comfortable and coddled, or is it really, like I say, great art fucks your shit up. It's like, wait a minute, and it does the other thing. Yeah, great art, I think, makes you go, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I can do that, but necessarily, because here's McLuhan said, and you said this earlier, interior, call it the interior landscape, the inner voice or the inside. He said, James Joyce has solved numerous problems which science has not yet formulated as problems. And Tony Conrad, who kind of helped Lou Reed start Velvet Underground and is an amazing artist, he said, artists break laws that haven't been made yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I like that, and that's true. And I would add to that, probably some of the most innovative art never gets out there, never gets published,
Yeah.
never becomes known, and that's immensely frustrating.
Yeah.
I know I have one of my sons-in-law.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful artist. He lives in New York City with my daughter, who's a doctor, and he's at that point in his career where he's just so frustrated
Yeah.
that he sees other, a few artists get their work elevated and
Oh God. Yeah.
publicized and stuff, and it seems like such a random process.
Oh
And
yeah.
he's thinking, why them? Why that person?
Yeah.
And his art is really, it's spectacular, and it deserves, so
Yeah.
much more attention and an audience. And I just, it's not just because he's married to my daughter.
No,
uh,
I understand. It's like Zappa's saying, in order to be in the music business, you have to sell your cock and your balls. What do I got to do to get my art displayed so people can actually see it? And it's
Yeah.
like, wait, there's a couple lines. Tell them this: don't sell out, sneak in. That's the flip side. But Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver, filmmaker,
yeah.
he said, the role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail.
Trader said that.
Yeah, which is funny because it can be flipped to like sort of pretentious. My art is so pure, I tried to sell out, but it failed. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then here's the last one on science. This French archaeologist historian, Paul Vinet, Veyne, he said, science finds no truths. It discovers unknown facts that can be interpreted 1,000 ways.
That sounds very French.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting way. And he's an archaeologist.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sounds like an archaeologist take on science.
Yeah.
But I'll bet someone like a physicist like Niels Bohr might nod in agreement about that, because quantum physics is notoriously open to different interpretations.
Well, that's
even now.
Bohr's is on my truth page. That's a great one. The opposite of a fact is a falsehood, but the opposite of a profound truth may also be another profound truth.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, that's a really good one. I think I had that one on one of my literary theory syllabi. So yeah.
But talking about the French, I'm curious your thoughts on archiving, and I'll set it up. The word came 1400s, keep safe, free from harm. But in 1600, it's what we know the word to mean pretty much, a record preserved as evidence. But Charles Baudelaire said, if you try to make a statement long, deep, and rich, it will age very fast. If you try to only own the day you're talking, it will last forever. Or as David Lee Roth said, here today, gone later today. So it's like, why do we have to collect or gather stuff? I know the historical basis, but it's Ram Dass in Eastern philosophy teaches be here now. The point of life is to live in the moment. Mm-hmm. And when Lewis said artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So the Greeks would the Egyptians would keep stuff in their coffin with them. Yeah. But, I don't see boxes of stuff in back of you. Often when I'm interviewing people, they have, you've saved a lot of stuff that, your rough drafts for your books, or, memorabilia of your life's history with your family and friends. And so, the basic two questions are, Wayne, is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. Um, I tend to think um, there it's the certainly at an extreme level the will to archive is must be hardwired.
Yeah.
And I have, since you made mention of my friend Keith Nightenhauser,
Yeah.
whom you know. Um,
Yes.
how did you happen to get to know Keith?
He started attending our Finnegan's Wake reading groups in New York and in Venice and in Austin.
Oh, okay. Keith is has an extraordinary ability to collect
Yeah.
things, especially books.
Yeah.
And let's just put it this way: in his office at our university, at DePaul University,
Yeah.
I believe 3 times a fire marshal had to come in and issue an order that they had to clear a path. Was given 24 hours. um, so clearly with Keith, there's something hardwired in him that he
Yeah.
collects and doesn't get rid of things. And it's,
But let me just say, in Keith's case, you know him better than me. He has a massive like Rolodex of the mind
oh,
where he can just bring things up.
oh,
And maybe it's like just the presence of those books, he's naturally gaining the knowledge, or there's some process,
oh,
because it is like he is a Google service in a
oh, he
lot.
is. He's the human browser, I call him.
The human browser. Yeah.
I have never, I'll get back to your question, but I have never encountered a human being
Yeah.
with that kind of encyclopedic knowledge. And
Yeah.
I have written on God knows how many topics in my career. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a dizzy variety of topics. And I've never written on anything that Keith hasn't said, oh, have you looked at this or this or
Right.
this?
Right.
But anyway, so he's an example of someone that I don't think he just decided this is a good way to live. I think it's hardwired. And my wife, on the other hand, uh, I think is hardwired the opposite way. She doesn't spend a day without going through some part of our belongings and deciding that we don't need that anymore. And there's a woman named Marie Kondo, I think is her name,
Yeah.
who's published a book, I don't remember. It was something about getting joy from decluttering.
Yeah.
And when my wife came upon this book, it was like, angels singing. She said, oh, someone finally has given me a blessing for what I do naturally. And so she took that as,
Legitimizing her.
legitimizing what
You're a hoarder instead of an archivist.
yeah. So anyway, I think I'm somewhere in between, and I won't call that normal, but
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of stuff, but I certainly have less stuff than I would were I not married to the person I am. She keeps things very tidy.
Right. But do you have plans for your archive? Is the University DePaul able to archive any of your drafts or anything?
I haven't talked to them about that. I don't know about, when I moved out of my office, which I had for a long time, I really did just get rid of a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't have done all of that, but I do. I mean, the one thing I do have is I've kept a shelf of everything I've published, and so I've got all that.
Yeah.
And that will certainly be kept somewhere. But I don't know about notes and stuff. It would be good have that. I'm kind of, now that you say that, I think Marie Kondo has kind of dumped some of that stuff already. So that's too bad.
Okay, Wayne, what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction or compromise?
Yeah.
Compromise.
Boy, there's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements in your accomplishments? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
1, 2, 3. Luck, skill, and ambition.
Yeah.
Well, that's a hard one. Okay. I'll put them. It's going to sound braggy. I'm going to put skill first, luck second, ambition third.
Yeah. No, I know it implies when people put skill first. That's totally okay. I understand, because some people go, well, it's not those three. It's purpose, destiny, persistence, compulsion. So
Yeah.
T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
American.
Wow. What form is your inner consciousness in?
My inner consciousness is boy, that's a good question. My inner consciousness is in short paragraphs.
Oh, wow. I like that. Okay. So two of my film heroes say their mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mika says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle, and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
For talking about myself or generally art?
It's actually more for generally in art, but you can put it in the context. Yeah.
I think in the age we live in right now,
Yeah.
I'd say it's more the artist is of what was the phrase that was used?
Well, the word is vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, vehicle for projecting the elements of the surrounding culture. Yeah, I think it's more like that, and I think that's almost inevitable given the conditions of culture right now.
Yeah. But can art making be egoless?
No.
Is perception reality?
Again, it's just about how you define the terms. It's one version of reality. It's not all that reality is. It's one version of reality. Yes.
Lewis Carroll wrote, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
It's been a little while. But I've believed in some impossible things, but yeah. Age takes away so many things though,
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect lead in. Tell me one major element of your creativeness, your Wayne-ness, that stayed the same, and one that's changed, one element that's changed in the years you've been being creative, being an instructor, your whole who Wayne is, like one thing that's sort of stayed the same and one thing that's changed.
Well, let's see. One thing that stayed the same is I have a quality which I the phrase I use is I draw from Keats. It's called negative capability,
Yeah.
and that's always been with me, and in my teaching and my writing, where I enjoy having that mystery, that
Yeah.
some element of mystery, and um, I think in my teachings, there's always been some students who are a little frustrated by that, who want to be able to, have everything wrapped up completely. But
Yeah.
anyway, but that's always that stayed the same in everything
Good.
I've done. Now, something that's changed, I'd say the main thing, one thing that's changed is that I, um, I've developed a greater patience with myself, and I in my mm, first scholarly and now creative life. Um, I would work in bursts, and I would be very impatient if things didn't come right away. And I've over time, I've I've developed a greater patience. So if something doesn't come in those bursts, in those moments, I'll say, okay, that's not going to happen right now. I'll set it aside and I'll work on it later. So I think I think it's for the better. But my earlier self, if something didn't happen in my inspired burst, it was gone. It just wasn't happening. And now I can set things aside and then come back to them later.
Wow, Wayne, it reminded me of my mom said, God, give me patience and give it to me now.
That's your mom? Does she make the big quote book?
Yeah, well, I think she got it from somewhere else, but I always love just repeating it. It's such a great line.
Yeah.
So Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Um, I for some reason, I have not been able to make myself pursue one area of specialty in my
Right.
writing.
Yeah.
And it's just something about me that I do something and I learn about it and I become enough of an expert to write about it.
Yeah.
And then I write about it and then, send it out into the world. And then I want to do something else,
Yeah.
often something completely different.
Yeah.
And that is a weakness, because it's so much easier to reside in a specialty
Yeah.
when you're a professor.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I can't do that. But I think that I've made that a strength because I've been able to publish in a lot of different areas, and eventually I've been able to tangle those together into work that's interdisciplinary. And I think my best work, actually all of my books have been interdisciplinary. So a lot of people don't even know, unless they read my bio, they don't know what field I'm in. So I think it helps. It helped my writing and my thinking, because it tangles things together in a productive way.
Yeah, really good. Because I love that you could have went into philosophy, but then you went into writing, and then you just let that philosophy hang in there the whole career. So
Yeah.
that, that's what someone taught me once is, dude, I never specialized. And he goes, that's your strength.
Yeah.
We're,
Well,
we're taught to specialize.
yeah.
What are, and now they call them hyphenates or whatever,
Hyphenates. Yeah.
you hyphen. I'm this is this and this. There's a hyphen between, you're a philosopher, writer, professor,
Yeah. But it is easier to be a specialist because it's just because I have a friend here at DePauw he's my age, and all his work is on, not only is it all in pre-Socratic philosophy, but it's on the the guy who saw everything as like music. I'm blanking on his name now.
Yeah.
The Golden Thide. I'm sure you've got quotes from him.
Yeah. I was going to say Wagner, but no.
No. It's pre-Socratic philosopher. Anyway, so he writes.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
I don't know. But,
and it'll come. But anyway, so he works on these fragments of these one philosophers. He spent his entire career from the time he was a grad student on that, and I see him going off to his office, and I envy him. I'm thinking, that must be so nice, knowing exactly what you're going to do all the time. But it's just not. It's not my what the hand. It's not the hand I was dealt.
Yeah. Well, fill in the blank, Wayne. Anger can be a productive emotion when
the cause is just.
Yeah. Good. And I asked my friend who writes comedy, can satire be destructive? And he says that's the job of satire. But if me and you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill us, some people think dying is destructive. But Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the function of satire?
I think the function of satire is people often forget, and when they define satire, is that it should be funny. It must be funny. It's got to do some sort of make some sort of critical statement, but it has to be funny.
Yeah.
And I think that's what satire has to do well. It's got to entertain at the same time it's criticizing, and God knows we need that now. And the best satire shouldn't just be scorched earth and get everyone depressed and so on. The best satire, as it entertains, might actually find it might get some people who didn't know the critical point. They might find its audience in unexpected places.
Yeah.
And I think say the old Simpsons used to do that, or the early Saturday Night Live.
Oh yeah.
They used to do that.
Yeah.
Before they became too sort of hardened.
Yeah.
But Pythagoras was the philosopher I was trying to think of.
Oh, Pythagoras. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Gurdjieff said that laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. And McLuhan loved to quote Steve Allen, said, behind every joke, there's a grievance. And I'm curious your thought on that. What's the function of laughter in this? Behind every joke, there's a grievance.
Yeah,
any thoughts? Yeah.
That's Steve Allen who said that.
Steve Allen said that. Yeah. And I don't like every every joke, well, not necessarily every, but behind jokes, there's a grievance is kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah. He was a pretty smart dude, wasn't he,
Oh,
Steve?
Steve Allen is brilliant. Yeah.
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 Well, I think what I like about that is that I think people who are making jokes are often using that as a kind of coping mechanism,
Yes.
and often as a kind of a detour from some serious statement.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially people who are making jokes all the time or as a profession.
Yeah.
And you might say the one exception would be the kind of Jerry Seinfeld line of comedy, because that was sort of his original take. Was he saying, "No, I'm fine. My life is great," and that's what he tries to project. But I think he's sort of gotten into some trouble now and is trying to joke his way out of that. So,
yeah, it's a tough thing. It's similar to this, Wayne. There's a line that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into "You are what you hate." James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So any thoughts on this line, "You create what you resist"? And I'm not saying you, Wayne, I'm saying one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
Yeah, well, certainly, if you have to work up all that energy to resist something, I'm thinking about Joyce clearly in Catholicism. You work up all that energy. That means that it's deep down inside your psyche, and and resisting something isn't something that happens once. It's just a constant process. I believe enough in unconscious processes that you can't get rid of something just with conscious acts that cleanly. The unconscious will keep bringing things back. And I think that's what happens with a lot of those things that you think you've dismissed. I know, and just speaking from my own experience, it's one thing to dismiss the effects of the Catholic religion on a conscious level, on a philosophical level. It's quite another to do it with its unconscious effects, which come back.
Yeah.
And that's partly some things I've written about. And there's one essay I wrote about where it surprised me at the end of an essay, writing about something that there was a mission, the San Gabriel mission in not too far from where you are, the San Gabriel mission, where it burned, somebody burned it. There was an arson. It was where I was baptized, and it came up, it was in connection with something I was writing. And then I realized at the end of that essay, there was this uprising of just from my unconscious of just thinking about my mother holding me there to be baptized. And it's just this tremendous feeling of, I don't know, guilt.
Wow.
Anyway, I wrote about it. And I realized that, you can't just flush out those feelings. Yeah. And hence, where that resistance is never thorough in the way it dispenses with such material.
Heavy duty. No, Wayne, I asked for 90. We got about 10 more minutes. Can you go a little longer, or you got to go in 10?
No, I unfortunately I have to be somewhere, and so I 10.
So
I've got 10. So
10 more minutes. Great.
Yeah.
So these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. Number 1, who started it all?
who started it all. It was always here.
2, are we going to make it?
Probably not.
3, where do we put it?
Out with the trash.
4, who's cleaning it up?
Somebody else.
5, is it serious?
I hope not.
Wow, I love that answer. Okay, a few more. We're out of here. Wayne, this has really been fun. I appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, for me too.
How do you find peace of mind?
I have a few resources. I enjoy taking my time with my writing projects.
Yeah.
That does bring me peace of mind, oddly, even though they often stir up emotions. I talk on FaceTime to my grandchildren. That's always very helpful. And then we have this device. I don't even know what you call it, but you talk to it. You talk to Google, and then you can order up music. I guess it's Spotify.
Oh yeah, that's cool. You just talk. You don't have to pull a vinyl out or
No.
hit a button. Yeah.
No, and I enjoy asking it to play me things in the evening, especially when I'm like going to sleep. And that's just and I will call up things that are, especially if they stir nostalgic memories from college days, and that I'm not ashamed to say, some of that brings tears to my eyes.
Oh God,
some of that music.
Music, it is magic. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I would say there's going to be some rough times starting around age 14 for a couple of years. Hang on. Things get much better.
Great. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
Unresolved. I'm well. Let's see. Well, I'm really not sure how much longer I'm going to be around, and there's so much more I want to do. So I'm hoping to shape things. I'm hoping to leave enough things for so my grandkids will know who I was, and we'll have something. I'll leave enough for them.
It's great. It's amazing you use the word shape, because that's the next question.
Yep.
How has writing shaped your behavior?
It's on a silly level, it's not helped my lower back any. The doctor tells me, well, get up and to do this and that, and I'm thinking, I need to keep sitting and concentrating. But I think it's it's made me not as good a reader,
Yeah.
because I think I've at some point I decided this is my time to write,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to read as much. So I do more sitting and less reading.
Yeah. Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Oof.
You've laid your cards on the table for over 3 hours. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that he said. I think what the implied question there is, should you really try to tell everything?
Yeah.
I was just reading something about let's see, Joni Mitchell and her album Blue. Remember
Yes.
her album?
Oh, yeah.
A wonderful album. And
Yeah.
Joni Mitchell just said, she said when that came out, Chris Christopherson listened to it and he told her, "Good God," he said, "listen, girl, leave something for yourself." and I kind of know what he was getting at there.
Yeah.
And so again, so that's something I'm thinking about now as I'm writing essays about me and memory and family.
Yeah.
But your question was, what was it?
Well, that's my question was sort of implied. It's a funny little transition because, I could say, well, tell me a secret. Then it's
Yeah.
no longer a secret. And
Yeah.
all I'm really is I set up the question, what is it really all about? Which is just like, what is your philosophy of life completely in a couple words?
Yeah.
And you're one person who's a good listener, Wayne. I appreciate that because you really listen to the Wilder quote because it says a lot, but it doesn't really, it kind of can sneak into saying, well, he's saying hold some back and tell some, but
Yeah.
I'm asking you, well, what's it really all about for you? So, I mean,
Yeah.
what you said is enough because, I mean, that you've said so much of what it's really all about in all these other questions.
Yeah.
The last question is what gives you the most optimism?
Mm-hmm. I yeah. I would like to. I'm generally a pretty optimistic person.
Yeah.
That's and I think, yeah, I think I tend to be wired to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And so I have to look past a lot of news these days
Yeah.
to be able to do that. But on a I'll try to answer this quickly, but on a couple of levels. I'm on the level of nature. I always have been impressed at how resilient the body is.
Yeah.
For all its difficulties. I think, it's the body, like many parts of nature, is pretty resilient.
It
And
is.
that's a reason for optimism.
Yes.
And even at a political level, as young as the United States is, it's just faceted enough to have something like a resilience like that, or at least, or so I dare to hope. That's a Wordsworth phrase. Or so I dare to hope.
Oh, great.
America is just disjointed enough and multifaceted enough that it might have something like that resilience. And then at the cosmic level, I look at the, the photos of these galaxies and the way we've learned to understand their motions and so forth. And I think, big picture, there's something there that just, I'm a part of this. And frankly, when I was, as I say, up against the cosmic threshold, when I didn't think I had much longer to live, that was one of the things that gave me great equanimity, was seeing myself as just a part of this, and that feeling has stayed with me. It's a little bit like, at the end of 2001.
Oh yeah.
That cosmic baby, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's what I take the end of that thing to be. It's just sort of projecting the human ego out into, a larger sense of belonging to the universe. And so that's what makes me optimistic, is that feeling. And so I still have some of that now.
It was well described. You described it well, Wayne. I appreciate that, because I'll send you this post that Rebecca Solnit put out about 5 sentences, and it's really hopeful in the state we're at. But again, we're all one. You kind of described the noosphere by Tehil Shadan. We're all part of this cosmic oneness. And the first question I asked on part 1 was, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Yeah.
And the last question is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And says, what gives you the most optimism? He says, other people.
Yeah.
So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Wayne. Thank you so much for your time and energy. Really, really beautiful.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and thank you. You do a great job, and it was. I guess we can both thank Keith for putting us together.
Really cool, and thanks for your time. I learned a lot. Thank you so much, Wayne.
Okay.
Even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
All right. Peace.
Thank you.